When you look at the comparison of just a few of the notable accomplishments in their careers, you can see that Tiger obviously edges Jack in PGA Tour victory totals. And of course, Jack still stands on his own with the 18 major championship victories. We're going to get to their relationship here in a moment because it is interesting, although it's not one that we talk about them getting together a great deal. But Jaime, I want to go back because, Jack Nicklaus dabbled in the booth when he still was competitive for ABC. They'd get maybe 45 minutes to an hour. He goes into the booth every year for Golf Channel, also on CBS. He was in the booth when he hit that shot on 16, and he said under the circumstance, the greatest shot maybe he'd ever seen. Do you agree with that?
Well, I've seen Tiger hit probably some better shots, not many. It was a perfect shot, and it was incredibly impressive for the skill that it required. I do think that the shot, for example, he hit in Japan with David Duval from around the green that he holed to get into a playoff was even a little better. But I think what Jack was really taking into account were the situation that Tiger was in, not just in the tournament, but in his life at that moment. He'd won in 2009, of course, and then didn't win again until Bay Hill of 2012. Memorial was his second win, sort of in his comeback from personal difficulties, and I think it was really a significant moment in that regard. And I think that's what Jack was alluding to more than anything. It did tie him for his 73rd victory and tied Jack. Not that that was something that was in Jack's mind, but there was a monumental aspect to that win. And it seemed like Tiger was really turning the corner at that moment. And to pull it off the way those two guys could always reach down deep and really find a way to get it done at the most clutch moments, I think Tiger and Jack shared that attribute at a higher level than any other two golfers in history.
I'm so glad you brought up the Chip partnering with Duval in the World Cup. If you've not seen that, folks, YouTube it. It's really kind of absurd. All right, this relationship, the greatest, whatever it is, whatever the pursuit may be, the recognition of somebody that you go, okay, they're very good. This guy is different. Matt, to you, when do you think that Jack really had an awareness, a keen awareness that he was different and the ascendancy was not going to stop?
Yeah, I think the first thing is it's important to define what that is. And based on the conversation that you were just having with Jaime, I would define it as being the ability to do what you need to do at the time that you need to do it, which is incredibly rare. And I don't think any two golfers possess more of that than those two guys. But after Tiger won his second U.S. Amateur, of course, he gets another invitation to Augusta National and the Masters in 1996. So he plays in a practice round with Jack Nicklaus and Arnold Palmer. The two legends were so impressed with this young man that they immediately invited him to play with him in the par 3 contest. Now, Jack said something to the media that week that I think absolutely defines that which you just asked me, Gary. He said, quoting, "Both Arnold and I agree that you could take my Masters and his Masters, add them together, and this kid should win more than that. This kid is the most fundamentally sound golfer I've ever seen at any age. I don't know if he's ready to win yet or not, but he will be the favorite here for the next 20 years. If he isn't, there is something wrong." Close quote. Now, just for the purpose of definition, if you add Jack's Masters 6 and Arnold's Masters 4, back then, all those years ago, he's talking about Tiger winning more than 10 times at Augusta National. There's no question that at that time, in the mind of Jack Nicklaus, that Tiger Woods had fully arrived.
Yeah, it's a unique relationship, obviously. I think the common factors that both Tiger and Jack have together is they mutually respected all those great players, and you could tell that Jack really respected Tiger. You could see talent, you could see greatness as the time was going to go on. I think what Jack really, what he liked about Tiger's game more than anything else, I think he wished he had his short game. Jack Nicklaus with a Tiger Woods short game would have been, he might have won a lot more. But Jack didn't need that short game. He hit the ball so well and hit so many greens. But I think that, down through the line, Jack really, really appreciated the fact that, like Matt so eloquently said, that they respect each other because they do the right things at the right times when those times were needed. And I think that that's what has led Tiger on to greatness, and the respect that Jack had for Tiger just because of those attributes.
Well, Jack had a great, I think, insight into what really made great players. And most of it was nuance and intangibles. Obviously, he was impressed with, the physical games that he saw, but he always looked inside a guy. And I think, not just in terms of could they handle pressure, but did they have a sense of, how to kind of get it around when they weren't playing their best? Did they have other shots? Did they have ways of keeping their poise when, it wasn't happening? And I think what he saw in Tiger was a tremendous maturity, as everybody did. Even in junior golf, Tiger was considered to have kind of more of a mental edge. As good as he hit it, there was a poise and there was a particular competitiveness that he brought that was really his biggest advantage over the field. And I think Jack was very attuned to that this kid has something extra internally. And that, I think, is what impresses champions the most. I mean, he played with Arnold. Also, Arnold commented on it. Gary Player, the previous year, they played in the practice round. Raymond Floyd, Greg Norman, Fred Couples. It was almost like they were passing Tiger around to all get a shot at sort of assessing him, because they knew it was something especially special about Tiger. And I think Jack probably articulated better than anybody, because he could probably relate to it better than anybody.
I think what Matt, sharing that anecdote, and I think it's more than an anecdote of the experience that Jack and Arnold Palmer had seeing him. Jack was not prone to hyperbolic talk at all. He wouldn't do that. He wouldn't heap that upon a player of that tender of an age unless he absolutely believed that he could. He certainly had the game physically, but to your point, Jaime, there was something about him that was different in terms of the way that he could process situations and apply them to execution. That, to me, is the separator between those two, because if you look at them historically, we don't look at the big blunder. We don't point out the one that they kicked away that they should have or shouldn't have. And John, the one thing that Jack has always said about major championship weeks in particular is, don't make the big mistake. Let somebody else do it. And that half the time, he even said, half the time I wasn't necessarily at my very best, but if I knew that I made the right decisions, the proper decisions, that I would come out ahead. Tiger did the same thing. I want to ask you, John, their relationship, Jack has even pointed to the fact that he's not really spent a lot of time with him. Why do you think that is?
I just don't think that they had the opportunity really to spend a lot of quality personal time together. One thing that they had in common is when they looked at a leaderboard, they didn't see names. They saw scores. They knew exactly what they needed to do. That's what the similarities were. I just don't think that they had just the quality time, the quantity time together. They did spend some quality time together talking about things, but Jack was so giving, and whenever he walked off the green like that, where you see there, he meant it. He really appreciated the fact that Tiger Woods was winning his golf tournament. He couldn't be more proud of one of his winners than Tiger Woods winning that the Memorial.
John and Gary, Matt, I think when guys of that stature, they tear themselves apart in an egotistical way, but they know who they are, and they don't necessarily need to share, or be reinforced with what they're doing. You see a lot of young players go to Jack, and Jack's an incredibly generous giver in terms of his wisdom, in terms of advice when he's asked. Tiger didn't do that, and I don't think Jack did that himself very much. Perhaps with Bobby Jones, slightly, but most of those two guys just kind of who they were. And just did not need a lot of guidance. It was all internally motivated and all internally directed. And I guess, we talk about Michael Jordan and Tom Brady. These guys, they're not advice askers. They're just doers.
I think a couple things that are important to point out is that, Tiger was always in the pursuit to some degree to Jack's position all time. And to Jack's credit, even during the times where Tiger has been riddled with injury and other things, he has always held out the belief that he could challenge the 18. And Tiger's been very good for the Nicklaus brand for the last 15 to 20 years because he has always been the mark and has remained that quantitatively and monetarily. He's been very good for the Nicklaus businesses, so to speak.